The leaves are changing, the wind is blowing. It's spooky season, and I have just the pattern roundup for you. Filming out in my very autumnal backyard could either be a great idea or a big mistake, because when we came home today, it was bright blue skies and sunny. Now it is all clouded over. There is plenty of wind blowing, which I'm hoping the mic is not picking up, but we shall see. We're going to explore this together. But I felt it was super appropriate to film this particular pattern roundup outside in my very autumnal backyard, because I'm going to be sharing 20 size-inclusive Colourwork sweaters for Halloween. Yes, we are into spooky season, and unlike the stores who have already bypassed Halloween and are well into sharing lots of Christmas items, I am more of a Halloween girl than a Christmas girl, so I have put together a list of Halloween patterns, which I'm very excited about. I have chosen 20 Colourwork patterns that are all spooky themed. Now, spooky is a bit of a broad spectrum. They're all Halloween-y. Some of them have motifs that are more on the cutesy side, others are more on the spooky side. But I have put them together in this list, and I have broken them down into different types of motifs. So starting with the cutesy, heading on to the spooky, and ending with some that you will probably recognize. If you're new here, hi, I'm Whitney. I am the maker behind the Knitted by Whitney YouTube channel, and this is one of my pattern roundup videos. I tend to do both podcasts as well as pattern roundups, and I sprinkle in the odd special video as well, but I know that these pattern roundups are a fan favorite, and let's get into this list of my top 20 Colourwork patterns for Halloween. We're starting off with not one, not two, not three, not four, but a bundle of 5 Colourwork patterns. This is the Fall Favorites collection by Megan Regan, otherwise known as Bad Wolf Girl Studios. If that name rings a bell, it is because she is the designer behind my Estrella sweater, which is that beautiful star patterned sweater that I'm wearing in the opening credits of all of my videos. It is one of my absolute favorite patterns, and I just think Megan is a genius when it comes to Colourwork circular yoke sweaters. Her ideas are just so cool, the concept is well executed, and this bundle of Halloween patterns is no exception. Now, this isn't just a bundle of 5 separate knitting patterns where you can pick each one that you want to make. These are interchangeable Colourwork patterns that you can pick and choose which motifs you want to include in your sweater. So you could make something that looks like one of the sweaters from beginning to end, or you could play around with the motifs and decide which ones you want to include and which ones you want to leave out, and create a sweater that is totally unique to you. There are some cutesy motifs like leaves and cats, but then there's of course jack-o'-lanterns and ghosties, and the possibilities for creativity are endless with this pattern. The next pattern on my list is for those who are into vintage Halloween. This is the Pumpkin Sweater by Knitting Glitter, and this is a made-to-measure pattern. We love to see it because it means that it will fit everybody, and it doesn't matter if you fit into a specific size chart or not. This one goes off of your specific measurements and your gauge swatch to determine how to knit the sweater to fit you perfectly. I love the vintage vibes of this sweater, and it is rare that there are vintage patterns that really suit a plus size figure. Most of the time the sizing caps out far too small for me, so I love seeing ones like this one that are made to measure that will suit you no matter what your size. There's also a very handy calculator in the pattern page on Ravelry that helps you determine how much yarn you're going to need for this pattern, so you can make sure that you're going to be prepared and have the right amount of yarn to make this sweater. In case you couldn't tell by the pumpkin sweater, we have started off by looking at pumpkin motifs. And the next pumpkin sweater that I have on my list is the Pumpkins sweater by Erica Ordog. This is such a cute, classic Colourwork yoke sweater. I really love that it keeps it simple with the two colors, with the exception of a little bit of green for the stems of those pumpkins. Take place on a row where you will need to do a bit of three-stranded color work, but it's just a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 rows. So it's a great way to get practice on that technique if you haven't done it yet, and keeps the rest of the sweater relatively simple with just 2-stranded color work with the orange and the beige. This next pattern bridges between pumpkin motifs and the next section of this video, which are cat motifs. It is the Pom Cat by Renard and Dormy, which is a French designer. And if you're unfamiliar with French, that means the sleeping fox. So cute. This pattern is a great option if you have a mini-me in your life who you want to twin with, because it includes both child size and adult sizes. It is so cute with the little black cat sitting on top of the jack-o'-lantern. The cutesy side of Halloween, which is more what I go for. I'm not into the spooky stuff. But I think this is such an elegant colorwork sweater. It's got a great border of beige around the cat and the jack-o'-lantern, so they really pop against the rest of the sweater. But it gives you the option to include a couple more colors to keep it interesting, and it's just such a cutesy little sweater. The next pattern on this list might be my favorite one on the list. It is the Feline Spooky Halloween sweater by Dr. Ella Horn. I think this sweater is an elevated version of a colorwork sweater because there are a couple of little details that really make it shine compared to some of the other patterns on this list. Of course, I like all of the patterns on this list, but there are a couple of things about this one that I really like. For starters, I love the outlining around the moon and the stars. I just think that gives it a really nice polish and helps you see those elements better. If you're just following a colorwork chart and you're knitting stitches to make it look like stars, sometimes it doesn't quite come across. So it's nice to have the embroidery around those elements so that your eye is really drawn to them and you see them better. And then I love that the body and sleeves of this sweater have a texture detail. There's a little eyelet stitch every so often, and I just think it really brings the sweater to life. If you don't want to do eyelets because you want your colorwork sweater to be super, super warm, I would just change the eyelet for a pearl bump or something to give it a little bit of texture and keep that element to the rest of the sweater. I just think it elevates it and makes it look really elegant. The color palette is also really beautiful in this sweater. You have the classic black and orange Halloween colors, but bringing in that really soft yellowy, like mustard yellow color and having the beige as well really gives it a great color palette, and I love that about this sweater. The next pattern on my list is the most size inclusive on this list besides the made to measure pattern that I shared previously. This is the Nocturnal Jumper by Sasky & Co. If the image looks familiar but the designer's name does not, that is because this designer changed her name recently. She used to be known as the Petite Knitter, but she now goes by Sasky & Co. in honor of her late bunny, Sasky. And she has designed some beautiful colorwork patterns. That's really her particular style, and I think she does it impeccably well. And I really love the Nocturnal Jumper as being something that is Halloween adjacent without being in your face Halloween. Part of it is down to the color palette that she has chosen. Part of it is also down to the motifs and how she brings in some classic, almost Nordic motifs along with that cat against the red moon, the harvest moon. So I think it's a really great blend that makes this more of a wearable all year round kind of sweater rather than exclusively a Halloween sweater. But if you're looking for something spooky to make, this might be a great choice. Now, if you're not really into Halloween, but you're into black cats, this next pattern is a great one. This is the Catfield cardigan by Svetlana Gibadulina. I hope I pronounced correctly, and I do apologize if I did not. This is an all-over black cat Colourwork cardigan. Yes, I have included more than just top-down circular yoke Colourwork sweaters on this list. This one is a little different, being a cardigan, and it's a steeked cardigan. So you're still going to be knitting all your colorwork in the round. So if you're not wanting to do colorwork flat, you don't have to with this pattern, but you will need to have all of your courage because you will need to cut into your knitting in order to steek this beautiful colorwork sweater to make it a cardigan. The next pattern on my list is the Salem Witch sweater by Erica Ordog again. She makes a couple appearances on this list. This is another fun mixing motifs sweater, but it still keeps things relatively simple with a fairly simple color palette, and there is only ever 2-stranded colorwork. There's never any 3-stranded. This pattern has not only black cat motifs, but also crescent moons and bats. We're bringing in another creature now, and I think this one is a really nice blend of motifs that give you really regulated stitches, so you can practice catching your floats and you can practice your evenness with your colorwork knitting. So I think this would be a really fun one to practice on. It's also, once you finish the yoke, just a plain stockinette sweater. So once you're done all the hard work of the colorwork yoke, you can sort of take a back seat and kind of relax by knitting the rest of the sweater in the round on the body and the sleeves. The next pattern on my list is one that almost made my K-pop Demon Hunters list, but I found a different pattern for that particular character instead. You might be able to guess what I'm going with there. This is a Conspiracy of Ravens sweater by Clara Cecilia. And this one almost got chosen to be Sussy, the magpie in K-pop Demon Hunters, when I was showing off patterns in that pattern roundup video. But I found another one that looked a little closer to Sussy. But this one is absolutely stunning. Kind of mimics a wood cutting, if you've ever seen those in books from the early days of the printing press, and you see those woodcut images that are kind of really bold, really sharp details, but so beautiful. I think this one is just absolutely stunning with the detail on the raven and with the motifs around it to sort of give you that evenness of color work so that you can keep your stitches relatively even. And I just think it's a stunning, stunning sweater. Now we start to get into the spookier patterns, starting with Dead of Night by Dear Ingenue. This one features bird skulls, and it is kind of dipping a toe into the witchy side of Halloween, you know, talismans and fortune telling and that stuff. I find that the motif along the bottom of the sweater kind of gives me like witchy ruin sort of inspiration. That's kind of what I'm drawing from that. I'm currently rewatching A Discovery of Witches, so this is making me think of Satu, who is the Finnish the Finnish witch in that series. And I just think this is such a fun one to sort of play into a witchy vibe. There's a couple of different versions shown on the Ravelry project page. The one that I have shown here is just a solid background color, but someone else has done it with a color changing gradient yarn in another option. So if you want to kind of like pull the witchiness a little back, make it a little more fun, you could go that route. But I personally like the full-on witchy route of this stark black or slate or gray background and then like a light creamy color for the color work. The next pattern on my list keeps with the skeleton vibe. This is the Boneyard Sweetheart sweater by Stephanie Lutfin of Tellybean Knits. Not only does this sweater play into the Halloween theme, it could also play into the Dia de los Muertos theme, because surrounding the skeletons is this beautiful band of bright hot pink, which kind of brings in the look of those sugar skulls and all the bright colors that you associate with them. And not only does it have the little skeletons, it also has these teeny weeny ghosts covering the space between the legs of the skeletons, keeping the color work relatively even so you don't have to do super long floats. And I really appreciate that as a detail in this pattern. I kind of struggle with keeping my floats loose. I'm not a very experienced colorwork knitter, so I definitely appreciate that in a sweater. This one I also really love that you can't see it in the photo here, but in some of the other photos, the motif from the yoke is continued on the cuffs. You do the little ghosties again right before you do your ribbed cuff, and I think that's such a cute way to echo the main colorwork of the yoke and bring it into the sleeves to keep it fun and interesting and cohesive. The next pattern on my list is another kind of choose your own adventure style. This is Halloween Heart by Megan Regan of Bad Wolf Girl Studios again. This one has a variety of cryptid motifs that you can choose from, as well as some classic Halloween ones as well. There are spiders, there are ghosts, there are Jack Skellington skulls, there's the boo across the neck, but in some of the other pattern photos you see Cthulhu, or you see other sort of creepy crawlies, and I think this one is fun if you want more of that creepy side of Halloween and you want to play around with some different motifs. This one is also great if you want to use a variety of colors, because every time you change motifs, you could change your yarn color. So this one is really fun if you have some scraps, or if maybe you have an advent. Maybe you got a spooky Halloween advent. How cool would that be to use in a sweater like this? So I love having options like that in a sweater, and I think this makes this particular sweater a really great option. And now back to some more cutesy Halloween. This next pattern is Let's Boogie by Katie Franceschi, which I hope I pronounced correctly, and I apologize if I did not. This one is super cute. This one reminds me of a sweater that I saw a couple of years ago on ModCloth's website, and I wanted so badly, but because I live in Canada, shipping and duty charges are so expensive that it makes it almost not worth purchasing from American companies sometimes. And ModCloth was one of those companies that it was just too out of my budget once I included the shipping and the duty charges. But I could now knit a sweater that looks just like that ModCloth sweater. I really loved it so much, and I think this is a really fun sweater because it does have the spooky, ghosty vibes. This one also kind of brings some of the same elements as the feline spooky sweater because it has a texture element over the stockinette sections of the body and the sleeves. This one again uses eyelet stitches, but if you want to keep your sweater nice and cozy, you can swap in purl stitches instead so that you don't have any gaps in your fabric. But what makes this one particularly adorable to me is that the ghosts all are blushing. They have these cute little pink circles to show that they're blushing, which makes it a really fun and cutesy sweater for Halloween if you're like me and you're not into the spooky side. So I love this as an option for those of us who are more for the cutesy side of Halloween. But if ghosts are your thing and you want something spookier, I have another pattern from Renard Endormi. This is Moonlight Ghost. And this one features more spooky ghosts. This one, the ghosts have these creepy arms that are dangling over. There's also some beautiful crescent moons right above it. And I love that this one has a dedicated color palette like the other one did. So this particular designer has thought very well about what they want to include and how they want to portray the motifs in this sweater pattern to keep it really cohesive and looking really sharp. Like her other pattern that I shared before, this one comes in child and adult sizes. So if you would like to have a mini me dressed in a ghosty sweater as well, you could do that with this pattern. The next pattern on my list is the Halloween Raglan sweater by Erica Ordog again. I guess I had 3 of her patterns on this list. This one is great for those who are intimidated by a circular yoke colorwork pattern, one that has a lot of motifs and a lot of elements to it. This one keeps it fairly simple. It is a top-down raglan sweater, which is a construction that a lot of beginner knitters start with. And you do the ghosts along that raglan stitch, and then you do some pumpkins around the bottom hem. So it's a little easier if you are new to colorwork, maybe you're new to circular yokes and you're very intimidated by them. This might be a great option for you to use instead. Now we come to the pattern that I think is probably the spookiest on this entire list, but it's just a personal preference. If you have trouble with spiders, you can cover your eyes for this next little section. This is Cobwebs by Megan Ann Lama. And yeah, it's spiderwebs and a spider on the sleeve of the sweater. I don't like spiders. I'm not scared enough that I can't deal with them unless they are of the shelob variety. If there's a really big spider in our house or in our yard, I will usually tell Doyle, there's a shelob, come deal with it. So I can handle spiders up to a point, but like in general, they're not my favorite. And this is a fun sweater for anyone who spiders are their favorite, or maybe they just want the spooky, cobwebby vibe of Halloween. And it's a really fun motif. It does look really, really fun. I love how this one is an all over Colourwork motif. I love how it plays around with having the spider on one sleeve. Almost gives Spider-Man vibes. So if you're into Spider-Man, you could do this in the blue and the red and sort of mimic his color scheme to make it more superhero themed. But if you just want to play it spooky, keep it with a different color theme. But I just think this one is really fun because it's all over and because it's got a really great fit to it. I believe this one is meant to have a bit of negative ease, but it has a great look and feel to it with that all over spiderweb motif. If you're into spiders, which I am not. Something I am into though is tarot cards. I love tarot cards. So I have also included the Tarot Card Sweater by Tamara Jordan, otherwise known as Star-Crossed Nets. Her colorwork patterns are just stunning. And would you believe that this was Tamara's first time doing an intarsia pattern? And she did this as practice in order to do a more complicated intarsia pattern, her unicorn tapestry sweater, which is absolutely stunning. You have got to go see that pattern. But the tarot card sweater seems a bit more manageable, especially for those of us who don't have any intarsia experience. I think this one is absolutely beautiful, and you could make it as like spooky and witchy as you want by picking one of the classic tarot card motifs. I believe she includes the star, the moon, the sun, the lovers, death, and then she also has a fun special one called the knitter. So if you are wanting just the colorwork, wanting just the intarsia kind of style sweater, but you're not super into tarot cards, you just kind of like the idea of them as an aesthetic, you could do the knitter version. But if you want to make this really spooky, I would go with probably death or even the lovers, because her version of the lovers is two skeletons kissing, which is so cute, but also spooky and witchy. Now, if you're into the witchy stuff, but you want something that's more spooky, more on the occult side, this next pattern is a good one. It is the Occultist pullover by Sheila Toy Stromberg. And this is another choose your own adventure pattern. There is colorwork motifs that you can choose from for the yoke of the sweater, which is a circular yoke. And then there are intarsia motifs for the front of the body of the sweater. So I have shown a version that includes just two colorwork that has the Ouija board motif along the yoke of the sweater. But then there is the bird skull motif on the sleeve cuffs and this really cool central motif on the body of the sweater. I'm not familiar with what it is, but it does look really cool and really spooky. And then you could also do a version of this pattern where you change up your colors doing different motifs. There are other versions of the pattern shown in photos on Ravelry, but in those photos, Sheila's holding her pet snake. And if you thought I had a problem with spiders, I have a bigger problem with snakes. I'm like Indiana Jones. I hate them, Jacques. I hate snakes. So I have not included those photos, but you can check them out on Ravelry if you would like. But this is a really fun pattern because you have the ability to put different motifs in, put multiple colors in if you so choose. So it's a really fun kind of choose your own adventure, spooky, occulty type sweater. Now for a pattern based on something I'm sure we're all familiar with, this is the Halloween Town pullover. And of course, that is The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's not one of my Christmas movies or my Halloween movies, but I know there's a lot of people who love that movie. So if you're interested in a colorwork sweater based on those themes, this might be a great option for you. This sweater is fun because not only does it include those motifs from the movie, which people would recognize, But also the color scheme is just really Halloween themed. There's bright limey green, there's bright orange, there's this like black slate kind of color, and then some bright pops of like a pinky purple. So it really plays into all of those typical colors you expect to see at Halloween. So if you're not really into the Nightmare Before Christmas, but you do like the motifs on this sweater, it could still work for you. There are other Nightmare Before Christmas Colourwork sweaters out there. Off the top of my head, I know that there's one called What's This by Megan Regan of Bad Wolf Girl Studios, but I've included that on one of my Christmas sweater pattern roundup videos because it's definitely more on the Christmas side of the Nightmare Before Christmas. This pattern was more on the Halloween side of the Nightmare Before Christmas. I really wanted to be able to include a Hocus Pocus themed sweater. I have featured one before in my very first pattern roundup video, my top 50 free size inclusive patterns video. I featured one called the Superstitious Pullover by Michael Shawn, which at the time was a free pattern. Then it became a paid pattern, and now it's discontinued online. So unfortunately, I was not able to share that in this video, however much I really wanted to share a Hocus Pocus one. I didn't grow up with Hocus Pocus, so it's not really familiar to me, but I know that there are a lot of people who Halloween would not be Halloween without watching Hocus Pocus. So I really wanted to be able to include that for you, and sadly I was not able to do so. In lieu of that, let's finish off with a free pattern. This is 100% That Witch by Brittany Westmoreland. This one is still of the witchy vibes, but it has some really fun elements to it that I do believe spark a little bit of Hocus Pocus connection. There is, of course, the big cauldron going around the neckline, and of course the book, which is not book, but it is still a spell book. It's still kind of fun. There's also the phases of the moon motif, and of course just the beautiful color palette of the classic white, black, and orange. I also just absolutely love the sample photos of this pattern where the designer is wearing a pumpkin on her head to model the sweater. I think that's so clever and so fun, and just a silly way to imbue the Halloween spirit. So this was just a fun little romp through some Halloween-y patterns. Of course, it is far too late to get any of these done in time for Halloween, but I wanted to do a spooky kind of themed pattern roundup video to play into the season. Of course, I wanted to take advantage of my beautiful backyard with all of these gorgeous leaves. And of course, I'm looking at another tree right in front of me that also has red and orange leaves. And it's just peak fall right now. So I really wanted to capture that on film for you and share that in this particular video. Thank you so much for watching till the end of this video. I hope you found something you liked on this list. And if you know someone else who might enjoy this pattern roundup, I hope you share it with them. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. It really means a lot to me. While you're here, it would help my channel if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and please leave me a comment below. Let me know which of these patterns you really liked. Let me know if you are more on the spooky side of Halloween or the cutesy side of Halloween. Do you have a costume this year? Are you making your costume? Let's have a great conversation in the comments. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I do have links to my Ravelry wish list, as well as a couple of affiliate links in the description box below if you would like to support the channel in any way, but there's never any pressure to do so, only if you would like to. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all take care, happy knitting, and happy Halloween!